The issue of repatriation of Aboriginal remains probably goes back even further than the late 70s when the museum did its first repat. I mean, there was the day of mourning in the 1930s, and one of the demands of those people was to have their ancestors taken out of museums. So, and it even goes further back than that in Tasmania, where communities down there were burying their people in unmarked graves because they were seeing the graves be disturbed and the remains sold. But certainly in the 1980s, there was a movement around museums, and not supported by all museums, to get ancestral remains returned. And initially the rules of repat were, if we could identify somebody as a known or named individual, and or somebody that had passed away in the last 100 years, then we could return. And of course we did stretch that quite often. But over a 10-year period up into the 90s, that opposition certainly disappeared, and then there was the PP&O national policy on return, which said that museums should return ancestral remains and could not put any vetoes on those returns, so they couldn't argue scientific value or anything like that. Back to the 90s, then we certainly we amped it up a bit. I mean, there was some federal money in the late 90s that came on board, which looked at supporting the issue of return of remains. But we certainly, national parks through their sites officers became very involved, and this helped the logistics of return, because these sites officers knew the appropriate people in those communities who to talk to and those sorts of things, so it sped it up. Well, the repatriation program was basically the cornerstone of the development of any relationship with Aboriginal people. If we said no to that, then Aboriginal people were going to say no to us for all our other projects, all our other consultation, the partnership in delivering exhibitions and those sorts of things. So it was pivotal. As I said earlier, I mean, the demand for the return of remains goes back to the 30s, even prior to that. So it was pivotal in us building a relationship with the broader Aboriginal community. The repatriation has been the number one demand of people, and we've met that, and we're continuing to meet that demand. And if we hadn't have done that, our relevancy within Aboriginal communities would be zero. Pivotal to it all, if we hadn't have started returning, if we hadn't have done it in good faith, then our relationships with communities would be, we wouldn't have relationships.